There's two parts to the presentation that I have. The first is what we're doing as part of Dublin City Council, as part of the largest local authority in the country. And I suppose you're probably asking, why am I going into that? And really it's to give you a view of the projects that we're engaged in, and also maybe the opportunities and the roles possibly that you can play, or the potential for co-housing in some of our larger projects. And then I'll get on to the actual challenge for both the City Council and for both people interested in co-housing into the future. So what are we about? Our main aim is to build more and better public housing on public lands. I was fortunate enough to, one of our colleagues here, Dahi Downey, arrange a trip to Vienna for myself and a number of the councillors back in December, and we were all struck by the concept of public housing as opposed to just social housing. We saw, and we did our own research in terms of, we met people in not as part of the conference, when we interrogated them, and there seems to be a collective view of what public housing is, and we feel that, like personally, I feel that that's it's something that we should be striving for. We had the Viennese International Housing Model over in April. I'm glad to say it's coming back, and my colleagues here from the Dublin Housing Observatory are going to be hosting it in this civic offices for the month of July, starting on the 1st of July. So I encourage you all to go along and see that. But one of the things that really struck me from that meeting there was, I met this woman. She was serving in a cafe, and she told me that she was in her final year in college, and that she had already engaged with the local authority in terms of how the final layout of her apartment was going to look like. So I thought that was powerful in terms of that she had there was enough surety there about her future. She didn't have any stress. She when you compare that to this, I suppose, situation that we have here, there's a lot of, I suppose, people that are outside the social housing bracket, or not eligible, that earn more than 34,000 net, are in a kind of a dilemma, and there's a lot of, I suppose, angst about their housing needs. So our aim is to build more and better public housing on our public lands. We need to significantly ramp up our housing capital works programme, and Ali and our staff are certainly do that, and I'll show a slide in a minute that demonstrates that. And I suppose picking up on a theme that a lot of our previous speakers have been talking about is the whole role of enabling. I see Hugh there from O'Connor, and I see people here from Malone, etc. So we're only as good as the collective, and we have to. We realise, Dublin City Council, we realise that we cannot deliver all this, the much needed housing on our own. That we need to work collaboratively and in partnership with people. And John's here from the housing agency. I mentioned his role as enabler to us in terms of meeting that housing need. Where are we? So we have over 25,000 tenancies. Over 12,500 of those are in houses. We have 8,500 flats or apartment schemes, and we've over 3,500 senior citizens dwellings. A high proportion of those buildings are in need of renewal or redevelopment. We have 639 units across 109 flat complexes built from the 1930s onwards. So it's a massive challenge for us to ensure that they're renewed, and I'll show some slides later on where we're achieving that. We've a huge and ambitious target. And our concentration is admittedly on social housing at the moment. So by the year, from the 4 years up to 2021, we aim to have built over 9,000 homes. And when I say us or we, I'm talking about the collective here. I'm talking about ourselves, the HBs, and the likes of Hugh there, right? And that's new build, that's acquisitions, and that's where John and his team, the housing agency, are helping us, assisting us in terms of acquiring properties, void refurbishments, leasing, and Part 5s. There's, I suppose, a very interesting graph. I just plotted it there from 2015, where we were at a low, and I suppose it would go even lower if I went back to 2009. But it just shows you how we've geared up in terms of our construction programme, and we're like a big ship. It takes us time, like in terms of getting all the services, getting all the processes running as efficiently as possible. But we're gearing up certainly there. We've strategic objectives as well. In addition to building more and better quality homes, we realise, as Rosie said there in her presentation, we want to live in a compact city, and this is what the companies are telling us that as well. And this is what I suppose you all feel like. We want to live in compact cities. We want to live close to where we work. We want better quality homes as well. It's not like our 1930s buildings where, like, I met a woman. She was carrying her shopping from the ground floor up to her 5th floor in one of our complexes. And she was in her 60s, but she looked a lot older. And I suppose for me, that provides the impetus and that provides the drive for me to really drive on. But in this day and age, we shouldn't have that. We should have proper serviceable, like with the apartments with lifts, etc., especially for people like that. Obviously, we want to build more sustainable units as well. Just to give you an indication again, the type of schemes that we're looking at. Going back to 2008, we had a big program I was involved in the public-private partnerships, and we spent a lot of time engaging joint developers, I suppose, of our large estates. A lot of them suffer from antisocial behaviour. A lot of them, the way they were designed, didn't have dispensable spaces. And however, the market conditions caught up with us at the time, the market and economic conditions caught up with us at the time, and a lot of them resulted in failed PPPs. I'm glad to say, and I'm going back to our theme of perseverance and resilience. So that was 2008, 2009, and now last year we've completed the delivery of over 100 units there as part of the first of 3 phases there in Dolphins Barn. And I'm glad to say, like, that this particular development was designed in-house by our own city architect, Stefan Lowe, and it was shortlisted for an RII award there last week. We're also master planning out the subsequent phases. The second stage is delivery of social and community infrastructure, and the third phase then we will look at introducing some kind of mixed tenure. So I was talking to Padraig there the other day on the phone, and that's the type of opportunity that when we're dealing with large scale regeneration, we would like to, even engage with yourselves in our role as an enabler to see what role you could possibly play in some of these large scale redevelopments or regenerations, because we want to see mixed incomes. We want to see, we want to see a more sustainable community there into the future. This is the lovely image of the new Dolphin House. I'm not going to go into it. We have a very healthy pipeline. Right. Another one of our big projects is St. Theresa's Gardens. We're in the middle now of, we've done a master plan for 1,100 units. We're constructing 54 at the moment. That we're actually going to revise up the number when we're dealing with adjacent landowners, and we're going to probably revise that up significantly again. Another very exciting project. Dominick Street was another failed PPP, and we're back on site there at present. It'll be 72 modern units. We're also going to have a commercial element to it as well. O'Devney Gardens, we're at the stage now where we're about to announce who our preferred bidders will be very shortly. It's going to be a mixed income, mixed tenure scheme. Charlemont Street is one of our success stories as well. The redevelopment of that. There's the new version, but likewise that. Come back to the theme of resilience and working together. That was nearly on its knees in 2008. We decided to stall the project in terms of we worked in partnership with the developer, and we allowed some space for the market to come back before we went at it again. So we didn't scrap the competition. We kept faith when a lot of people were pressurising us into scrapping the competition. Fatima Mansions is another success story. Was ravaged with antisocial behaviour issues and drugs. and now it's a high demand mixed income community, obviously served, has its own community facilities and has its own access to the Lewis, etc. We're working on an innovative project there for St. Michael's Estate. It's going to be 30% social and 70% cost rental. There's issues with, the challenges for us are to determine and to make it as affordable as possible. St. Mary's Mansions, this is another, I suppose, an avenue for us in terms of that we're not just doing it all ourselves. We're engaging with approved housing bodies. This would be one of our former stock. We assigned it over to Clued, who are actually adding on floors onto that. So it was an innovative view, or an innovative sort of engineering project for us. And they're moving on swiftly again. So we're talking about sustainable homes, etc. We're also in the business of, we have a large number of bedsits across the city. We're converting them at the moment, and this one, very proud of this one, and Nally's staff should take a bow as well in terms of they've achieved, this is our first refurbishment that's achieved Passive House. And we've got, it's an amazing finish, and it's the feedback from the tenants is overwhelming in terms of they can literally heat their homes for €1 a week throughout the year. So it's great in terms of, addresses fuel poverty for them, and a great standard of accommodation. And I suppose that's a new bar that we're trying to achieve. So Dublin City Council, Dermot's always said that Dublin City Council should be very proud of some of its initiatives, but I think particularly this one. There's Ali and our Lord Mayor, one of our tenants. Very happy indeed. Now part B. This is where less pressure on myself now and more pressure on yourselves to engage and say, listen, well, what role can you play in this? We've limited amount of land. Okay, there's competing interests in it for some of our lands. Some of our lands that we had earmarked, that was housing, and say we demolished the housing, and we'd earmarked to replace it with housing. By the time we do that, we get a number of interest groups saying, listen, we need a football pitch, or the area doesn't have a football pitch, or we need X, Y, and Z, we need a public park. Now, they're all very laudable sort of needs, but what I'm saying is they're competing needs that we need to be aware of. There's greater availability of land, as you mentioned there in Brussels. There's greater availability of land in the suburbs, right? You mentioned along the canals there in Brussels. Similarly, we'd have greater availability of land in the suburbs. However, we still have a lot of regeneration projects within the canals, within the city centre. All the work that we're doing is in compliance with Project 2040, which it talks about a smart, compact city. So we're building on brownfield sites effectively. And I suppose another issue for us is that we'd like to introduce mixed income into a lot of these communities. And that has the benefits of sustaining local shops, etc. And it gets away from having sort of a mono-tenure demographic. We have 11 sites identified for potential affordable schemes. And these range from Ballymun, Cherry Orchard, O'Devney Gardens, Oscar Traynor, Belcamp, Finglas and Poolbeg. Now some of those will be affordable purchase. Some of them will be affordable to rent. But the list is not exclusive to those, so I'll come to how we can maybe engage in that. Again, this is where we're going. We're trying to regenerate not only our complexes, but in the wider area. So we're concentrating on the public good at all times. Okay, going back to complex city, there's a lot of, it's a big driver for us. And I suppose another big driver for us is the changing dynamic of the city, the new Irish that are coming in, right? The changing population we have. There's going to be 22% of our population by the year 2040 are going to be over 65. So we need to start thinking about that now, planning for that now, putting measures in place. The family unit in that time is projected to drop to 1.9 persons, right? So there's big implications for the future of 3-bed semis, which their days are numbered in Dublin City. And the highest demand will be for 1-bed units or homes. So I suppose the last 2 points are the right quantity of appropriate housing in the right locations that are accessible and affordable. That's going to drive us. And the last one is attractive mixed-use, sustainable neighbourhoods, which will benefit from phased delivery of supporting infrastructure. How do we get there? So this is our role in terms of enabling. That's, as Rosie said there, like in Limerick, we see this as our role, enabling people with the right ideas and with the right will and right passion to deliver things. We would like to, we'd be open to working with you in terms of a pilot. We would sit down and establish a working group. We would work with you in terms of selecting a site. We would assist with our resources and doing due diligence, feasibility study, maybe even a cost-benefit analysis as well on top of that, just to make sure that we're on the right track, okay, from the start. In terms of just listening there earlier on with the community land trusts, I suppose and Dermot as a councillor there, the decision to dispose or give a lease is a reserved function of our elected members, and our elected members in general are acting well. Elected members have told us in the past that and they passed a motion as the housing committee that would like to see public lands for public rented housing only. Right. I think we'd explore the different models with them, like of how long a lease would be, but the repayment options would equally be valid, because we would see, like in Vienna, it took them over 100 years to get to where they've got to now, and it's a process of reinvesting. If there's any surplus, to reinvest that surplus and to enable other people to do it. We'd obviously we'd have to protect the council, and we'd have to have step-in rights, etc. Right. The typical scenario would be that possibly we could acquire a site for you, right? And we'd offer a long-term lease, but a percentage of that site acquisition cost would have to be paid back on an annual basis. Any surplus would have to be reinvested. What should Dublin City Council expect from any interested party? Well, we'd have to obviously have confidence that the group can deliver, right? And as I think Stephen mentioned there in his presentation earlier on, it was very important to get a pilot, very important to get a concept that people can see, and instead of become something less of a concept as actually living proof. So we'd like to see that. But we need a sound business case, and it's, after all, there are public assets. The land is public asset. It's effectively public money. So we'd be subject to the public spending code, and we'd have to have a robust cost-benefit analysis, and that's what we do in all our schemes anyhow, internally. Another option there, like I suppose, is and John O'Connor backed me up on this, is that we work in collaboration with a lot of approved housing bodies, and I suppose that's an option as well. We've comfort dealing with them. They know the process. They've access to various different streams of funding, so maybe even to consider possibly bringing them in as a partnership and maybe doing a different kind of a pilot. In summary, as I said, resilience is required. Even for us, I think that's one of the key things. We think we're going to achieve a lot quicker than we actually do. And I'll leave you and finish out on a quote from Irish: "Ní neart cúr le chéile." You know, there is no strength without unity. Thank you very much.